I think some are malicious, I think some are crooks, I think some are complete charlatans and they know it. Well, the internet is on fire, the Muslim internet is on fire, social media is on fire about this Abdullah and Hasanat issue. I've not really got involved. My son-in-law did actually make a video about it. I'm not really interested in these characters themselves. What interests me is this idea of Ruqyah, which is Islamic exorcism. I don't know whether you've heard about that.
I've heard about it, but for those that haven't, is it the same as in the film The Exorcist?
No, not quite.
That's probably what most people think of when they think of exorcism.
Not quite. I'll give a brief explanation.
Okay.
Ruqyah comes from the Arabic word which means to lift, to go up. So basically it means relieving that person of their illness, taking it away, lifting it up.
Okay, literally from going up.
And it's, I mean, the Quran itself describes itself as shifa, which means cure.
Yeah, healing.
So it is supposed to be healing, and just reading the Quran is supposed to be healing. And there are plenty of hadith that refer to specific surahs which are particularly good. For example, most Muslims will know the three quls, which are Qul huwallahu ahad, Qul a'udhu birabbin nas, and Qul a'udhu birabbil falaq.
These are the awazat.
These are the mu'awwadat, exactly.
Okay. The refuges?
Sorry?
Does that mean refuge? As in a'udhu
seeking
billah?
Refuge, yes. Okay. Yeah, the ones for seeking refuge.
Yes. Okay.
I used to read them before I go to bed. Most people read them before they go to bed. And they actually, for example, Qul a'udhu birabbin nas refers specifically to jinn. It said, Qul a'udhu birabbin nas, malikin nas, ilahin nas, min sharri al-waswas al-khannas, alladhi yuwaswisu fi sudurin nas, min al-jinnati wan nas.
Okay.
So, you know,
I'm keeping up. So far.
Good.
Yeah.
So, I mean, basically, I seek refuge, in God, the Lord of mankind, and so on. And then it says, from the evil khannas, and the khannas is supposed to be shaitan.
Okay.
It means the one who withdraws, the sneaky Pete.
Can it also mean like how would you say a sniper?
Oh, yes.
In a military sense?
Yes. No, that's slightly different.
It's a different word? Because I've heard a similar word used to mean someone hiding and shooting.
God, that's just gone out of my mind.
Okay,
but,
we'll come back to that.
This actually, in fact, it also has a meaning of khannas means something with a drippy nose.
Okay.
So it's also kind of like given this idea of this kind of evil, but basically it means shaitan, someone who withdraws and hides and
when he whispers
and is sneaky and when he whispers. Min al-jinnati wan nas, from jinn and humans,
mankind.
people.
What are jinn?
Jinn actually is a pre-Islamic concept. I mean, it existed before Islam. Basically, they are creatures made of smokeless fire. Yeah. They live in dingy, dark places. They can take on human form. They
can possess people.
Yeah, they can be good and they can be bad.
Yeah.
This is all according to Islam. Yeah. I don't believe this, by the way.
Okay. This is what.
Yeah.
So we're told. And as you mentioned in your podcast about possession, Majnoon, the word for crazy, means taken by the jinn.
Exactly, possessed by jinn.
Okay. This is what we're getting to the point here. This is culturally or historically, people associated madness with people being possessed by the jinn, or these demons.
Precisely.
Hundreds of years later, we now understand that mental health, people can deteriorate in their mental health, doesn't mean that they are possessed by demonic entities.
Spot on. That's exactly right. I mean, these superstitions go back to the earliest records that we have of human civilizations. The ancient Babylonians, I believe, or the Sumerians believed that sickness demons caused sickness, and there are so many stories of people believing in demons that cause illness and so on, and it was because they didn't understand how the brain works, how the mind works. So these were times when we hadn't sort of advanced. We were still in a primitive stage. But these beliefs have persisted, unfortunately, and what is really sad is that they find justification within religious texts. So, I mean, Christians also practice, exorcism, as we know, and in Islam, Jinn is mentioned in the Quran and in Hadith. But as we've advanced, we know that all sorts of mental illnesses are caused by different factors. They can there's depression, schizophrenia, anxiety, all different types, and they can be triggered by biological factors, by environmental factors, and I've got personal experience of this in that my own son unfortunately suffers from schizophrenia, and it was triggered by the cannabis use. And
sorry, lessons for life. Okay, so cannabis.
Yeah, and
we know the psychosis.
I mean, I've been dealing with his doctors for some time now, and they know very, very well that cannabis can be a trigger. I mean, a lot of people can smoke cannabis and it's not a problem, but for some people, if they're genetically inclined, it can be a trigger to cause psychosis.
I mean, to be a well person, physically, mentally, emotionally, etc., you need to have a good diet, you need to do exercise.
Absolutely.
Do you also need an element of spirituality? And is this where religion can cure these types of anxieties, or whatever you want to call them? Not in the way that maybe they understand, but could call it placebo.
A sort of a placebo, yes.
Okay.
And
but
I mean,
placebos work.
The placebos do work.
Okay.
It's the power of the mind, isn't it? I mean, it's like the power of prayer. I mean, I don't believe that prayer actually causes anything, really materially, but psychologically, it can make a difference. And when people have that right mentality, it can make a difference to their behaviour and their actions.
But if you know it's a placebo, it won't work for you.
If I may go into the actual practice of
go for it.
Ruqyah. So what Ruqyah is in a basic sense is that it's basically just reading Quran, reading certain surahs like the ones I just talked about, the 3 pulls and other verses which are mentioned in Hadith, and sometimes also doing things like saying surahs over water or over olive oil or over black seeds, and giving them to drink the water or to rub the olive oil on them or to take the black seeds and so on. Now, if somebody is suffering from a mental illness, which is what it is, I don't believe it's jinn possession at all, then this may actually calm them. It may actually make them feel secure. I mean, they come from that culture, they come from that background, and religion, that's one of its strengths. It can give people comfort, and it can give people reassurance. So they may find comfort in that. But I would always advise anyone who has a relative, a child, or a husband or a wife or some relative who is suffering in this way, to seek professional medical help. Go to the proper sources, because there are medications. Well, yeah, I mean,
you mean Western traditional proper medicine?
No, I'm talking about proper medicine. Now, I'm not an advocate of all these big sort of chemical companies.
The one with the water, where they put a tiny amount of something.
Homeopathy.
Homeopathy, yeah. I mean, that's used within the NHS, and it's apparently baloney, but they use it.
I'm not a fan of homeopathy. But if it works for you, whatever floats your boat, if it makes you feel better, fine. Yeah. But do seek real professional medical help. Go to your GP, go to the mental health services. There is medication, it can help. It's not great, I admit that, and I know that from experience, because my son is on medication, but it can help. And there's also lots of other therapies. There's CBT, cognitive behavioural therapy. There's all sorts of counselling. Sometimes it's just a matter of helping a person through a period of depression and anxiety. It's about family support. Sometimes, a lot of cases that I know of are teenagers going through teenage angst, rebellious period, and because they kind of are rebelling against cultural norms, their very conservative community says, oh, it must be jinn. It's just about helping them through that, and they'll get over it. Teenagers eventually grow up, and they get through things. So I would, definitely recommend seeing medical help. Now, the problem with the Ruqyah services and the Raqis is that there's a lot of charlatans, a lot of frauds, and to be honest with you, the Muslim community is plagued with real frauds, taking money, a lot of money. They charge 500, 600, 700, £1,000 just for consultations. And they say, oh yes, this person's got a jinn on them.
But do these people believe they're doing it?
Well, they do.
Are they believing Muslims?
In the case of Umm Abdullah and Hasanat, it appears that they were living a double life, and they were they didn't actually believe in what they were doing.
And that's the problem people have with it.
But no, that's. I mean, I think this is a rare case.
Okay.
A majority of the Raqis actually do believe in it themselves.
That's what I'm saying. That's why these two, why that case is blown up.
That's
in
why
particular,
that, yeah,
even though they all 9 out of 10 might be charlatans,
yeah,
extorting people.
I mean, the reason why everyone's so angry about this case is because they were frauds. They were deceiving people, and that's the really bad thing. I mean, the awful thing about this particular case is that they were taking charity money. I believe £300,000, and we still don't know where that's gone. I don't want to talk about this specific case because I don't know the details, and you know, the internet and Muslim social media is rife with all sorts of things. But I want to talk in general about these Raqis, these exorcists, these people who get rid of jinns. As far as I'm concerned, it's a waste of money, it's a waste of time. If, for example, a Muslim couple want to help their son or their daughter or child, they can read the Quran, they can blow on the water and give him to drink, they can get black seed oil, they can get olive oil. They don't need to pay someone to do that, you know, and God can still hear them, and God doesn't need their money. So I would really recommend that any Muslim not go to these Raqis. A lot of them are frauds, and there have been many cases of abuse, sexual abuse, many cases I know of. In my own son's case, unfortunately, some of my extended family brought in some of these people, and they ended up hitting him, and that is quite common.
In the name of, I'm beating the jinn out of this person?
Exactly, that's what they do. That's what they do. So, I mean, some of them tie the person up, they confine them to their room, all sorts of abuse, physical, mental, and even, I'm sorry to say, sexual abuse goes on.
Do you think these abusers know they're doing wrong, or do they think this is the way to do it? Is it cognitive dissonance? What's going on when that occurs? Are they malicious or are they misguided?
I think, like I said, I think a lot of them actually genuinely believe it themselves. I think some are malicious, I think some are crooks, I think some are complete charlatans and they know it. But I do think some are genuine. I mean, some of the sheikhs that were brought in to see my son, I'm not saying anything against them personally. Some of them were very nice people, or genuine people. But as far as I'm concerned, it's absolute nonsense. There's no jinn possessing my son. He's mentally ill because of, you know, well-known, you know, scientific issues, and you know, they are well documented.
Do the Muslims have the equivalent of the evangelical healers in America who get the man to stand up from the wheelchair and say hallelujah? Is there as much of that?
Not quite on the same level.
Okay. Because there's a lot of charlatans over there as well.
There is. But Muslims are getting there. We're going that way.
Right. Branching out.
I mean, there's all
money
this
to be made.
All this circus around Speaker's Corner, you know, and these dawah merchants who are all becoming famous. I mean, a lot of them are quite genuine. I mean, I've got nothing against a lot of them. You know, they're quite genuine. But there are some people who are clearly out for fame and fortune and to make money out of it. Not all of them. Not all of them. But it is becoming a bit of a circus now. And I'm sorry to say, a lot of these Raqis are charlatans, and really, I would really urge the Muslim community not to go to these people. If they want to perform Ruqyah, you don't have to go to a Raqi. You can do it yourself.
And is it explicitly mentioned in the Quran, or is it from a hadith? Is this word Ruqyah in the Quran?
Yes. I mean, it's in hadith. It's not in Quran.
Okay.
And there are, you know, plenty of verses. And as I say, it's pretty basic. What is actually mentioned in hadith is pretty basic. There's no suggestion of hitting them or confining them or doing all this nonsense. This is what these charlatans do. The Quran is basically just, the Hadith is basically just saying, read Quran, you can give them black seed oil, olive oil, and do these prayers and incantations and that sort of thing, and do bukhur, incense, you know. And as I say, any person can do that. You don't need to pay someone to do that. By bringing money into it, you're actually attracting these charlatans, because they can suddenly say, and it's usually very charismatic, manipulative type of characters who will say, yeah, I can get into this because I can easily prey on these naive people. And it is, unfortunately, naive people who are in a desperate situation, who've got loved ones who they love dearly and they want to see them get better, and they're very, very vulnerable to these manipulative type of people. And it makes me angry, and you can see I'm angry.
No, absolutely.
because as I say, I have personal experience of it, and this case of Abdullah and Hasanat just reminded me of this whole circus of these raqis. A lot of them are real charlatans and doing a lot of damage.
No, and as you say, it's important to understand the actual problem with mental health. I think taking a doctrine that's 1500 years old and applying it to things we understand now can be dangerous. I think there is good things in spirituality, and you can be spiritual without being religious. I think meditation is definitely good for you.
Absolutely.
Whatever religion you are.
I don't believe in religion anymore, but I'm not against religion, and I would consider myself a spiritual person. I believe in something, call it God if you want to, some greater power, some cosmic force, and I do find comfort in that. And because I spent half a century as a Muslim, I still find myself, sort of in many of those same habits.
Feels like home, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I find comfort in it, and so it can help, and it can be of use. But I would really, really advise people to stay away from these charlatans, because literally, I know quite a few cases of people who have been sexually abused by these people, and it's absolutely disgusting that these people are allowed to get away with it. And unfortunately, because the Muslim community is the way that it is, we tend to brush things under the carpet because they don't want to bring shame and scandal on the family, and maybe the sheikh is well known in the community, so they tell the girl to shut up or to be quiet and to forget about it.
And in that line of work, the perfect excuse is, the jinn possessed me. I was doing my best. So it's a good get-out clause, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, even when I was a very devout, practicing Muslim, I believed in jinn because it's in the Quran, and I couldn't deny it. But I generally said, well, look, it was in those times that they were around. Yeah. Nowadays, they sort of don't
along with giants and people that lived to 3,000 years old. And
so I kind of I think I always was a little bit sceptical of this idea of jinn. But now that I've kind of rejected Islam, I look at this idea of jinn and I think it's absolutely ridiculous, and it does a lot of harm. And although I understand and I empathise with Muslims who believe in it, I would say to them, okay, I'm not telling you to reject the idea of jinn. I'm not telling you, to completely, sort of discount it. But at least if you want to do ruqyah, do it yourself. Find the proper ruqyah sharia, the proper methods of doing it, and don't ever resort to violence. Don't ever confine your child, and give your child love, support, and comfort. And that is the best magic.
Well, so that's what we all need. So thank you very much for chatting to me.
Okay.
Lovely.